Welcome to the Freelance Thrive. Here we talk with skilled freelancers about their professional journey. So stay tuned for real life experiences to learn and actionable steps to take to improve your freelancing career. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code.0 and 9am.works. And my guest is Matthew Mottola, a passionate freelance economy adaption ambassador, CEO of the Human Cloud, published author, international speaker, and the Forbes contributor. So welcome, Matthew.
Thanks for having me, Yuri.
Yeah, I'm so pumped up. After we had this conversation with Mark, I was like, I need to talk to Matthew. So here we are. And the first question, what inspires you in life?
So it's a good question. I don't think any of us really stop to think about it, to be honest. And so I think if you looked at my actions, you could probably do better than what I'm going to tell you. But I think there's a general overwhelming either fear or optimism that there's a better way to work. And work models, they're just not good enough. And, I don't get when I was younger, I used to get a lot more like revolutionary and angry and all that kind of stuff. And, as I've kind of seen all the different models, whether it be full-time employment, whether it be startups, whether it be large companies, whether it be contracting, all that kind of stuff. I just think freelancing is the best possible form, or kind of like the answer to democracy. It's the best of, right? So there's definitely weaknesses. There's definitely some things we need to change, but I just wake up and think, okay, I wish freelance models were normal and everyone had an opportunity to work this way.
So fear or optimism?
I don't know. I really don't know. And it probably changes day by day.
Okay. So basically about optimism, okay, I got it. But what are you afraid of? What is the fear?
I think the fear comes from a place of seeing the actual bad of full-time employment, and then also seeing the bad of some freelance models. And so there's numerous factors when we look at what's contributing to potentially a really bad economic climate, right? I'll use it just a US very specific lens. We have, say, a 3% unemployment rate, but things aren't going perfectly well. Inflation is definitely a problem, right? Underemployment is a problem. Unengagement in work is a massive problem. I think the only percentage higher than our divorce rate here is people unengaged at work. And so I think that's sort of where the fear comes from. And then when we look at automation and AI and the various technologies, and, it's just, there's a lot of forces prevailing against that. Hey, everyone's going to have a stable job and able to take care of their families and just really live, not the most extravagant, but just a good life. So I think that's where the fear comes from. And the optimism comes from fix that. And so when we highlight in the book, I think we highlight between 3 and 5 individual freelancers showing that they're able to be the parent that they want to be. They're able to be the caretaker. They're able to take care of a sick relative because of the flexibility that comes from these models. So I know that doesn't directly answer, but I think that's where the fear comes from. And we've all seen people that have been down and out because of some of these models, especially right now when we look at layoffs. I mean, it's just, I don't wish economic unfortune upon anyone.
What is the craziest myth about freelancing?
Well, I would say some of these myths have been shattered in 2 years, so I'm happy they're no longer here. I think the first myth is that it's transactional. So a lot of times we hear, a freelancer, they get in, they get out. It's totally not the case. A good freelancer stays with you forever, up and down, depending on the demand and what they can deliver. And so I think that's the first myth, is really the transactional nature. I think the second myth is this idea of on demand. And so unfortunately, people still conflate gig economy with freelance economy. And I think they're two totally separate models. I think gig is more about the Uber driver, right? Or the ride, sort of the app-based type work. And that's fundamentally different than someone who has 2 to 5 clients at one time doing, design, development, writing, you name it, various professional services type transactions or projects. So I think then that's for the second one. And we'll probably get deeper ones in the show, but that first one really bugs me. Just that freelancers are in and out. That's totally not the case.
In one of the previous episodes, I had a conversation with Balej, and he told when I join a team, I'm going to make friends there. I'm going to make money, it's like, but I'm going to make friends. So I can really relate to what you're talking about. And, but still, some of people are going to make money. So how do you think, what is the difference between those people who have this, I want to make money and I want to make friends? What is the difference between those two types?
I think as you, I don't want to say get older, as you grow in your career, those things start to mesh. And what I mean by that is, earlier in my career, I did a lot of free work. I did a lot of projects where I was probably underpaid, but it didn't matter because I wanted to get in front of the right people and I wanted to get the right use cases that I could point to and say, look at the proof of stuff I've done. And so I'd say early on, I was just grinding to have as much early success as possible to be able to then get the clients I want and the pay that I want. And I think that's where, I'm sitting in a place now that I really work that I don't want to do. And that's definitely a privileged position. And I think, it's earned, right? It's after 10 years of putting in the work to have some shitty clients at times and shitty terms at times. I still got, we all have a bunch of scars. If you're in the freelance / entrepreneurship space, man, it's not a stable path generally. So, but I think that's where they connect, or that's where how they play with each other is, I think money is earned based off the relationships that you develop. And to me, I know my relationships are generally formed by, hey, how can you help me? And in the reverse, how can I help clients? And then once I can prove that, then generally you'll know between 3 and 12 months that I'm well worth the ROI. And then that's where money ends up sort of streaming down.
You are talking so easily about being underpaid, but I feel like it was not really felt it. So how did you feel when you were underpaid?
It's a good question. I think I was definitely a lot more, I don't want to say emotional, but I definitely had a lot more negative emotions, I would say. If I'm being honest, I don't think I stopped enough to actually look at the way that I kind of think about money is I know the base that I need to live, right? And I've always known since I was 16 years old, this is how much it's going to cost to live. And usually in my case, it was between $2,000 and $5,000 a month. And so for me, as long as that base was getting covered, I really wasn't freaking out. And this is where the beauty of freelance is you have a lot more control to do that. And so I have had, numerous full-time jobs, and I have freelanced and alongside that. And it's kind of all connected, right? Because there's been freelance clients, there's been full-time jobs, and they've all kind of like meshed / merged with each other. And so I really think, there's numerous examples that I remember high tension and high chaos and just pure chaoticness. But if I'm being honest, I don't necessarily stress about what, which I know sounds bad, but it doesn't really get me.
What is the most underrated truth about freelancing?
Oh, I think the control piece, to be honest. I think if we look at a first principle of what freelancing does is it puts the power of control in the hand of those that have value, which sounds so generic, right? Like that sounds so ambiguous and high level. I think what that really means is there, some of the factors underneath that is the first thing is, who you're working in a full-time job. Most likely you are like 5+ levels downstream to actually understanding the decisions that are made and having control over those decisions. Whereas when you're freelancing or you're hiring freelancers, you know exactly who's doing the work and you know exactly who your client is. So you have that direct sort of visibility of responsibility. The second thing is you're literally not constrained. And so yes, some freelance projects, they can be on site if you want them to. They can be immersed. Like I do travel a good amount, but I have complete control. So no one can ever tell me you have to work at this time, you have to work in this location. And so I think that's sort of the second factor. And third, which, it's such an underrated is a client can never tell me you can just work with me. And I know it's there's kind of like this old it's kind of crazy for older men that someone that is working for you has other projects. But to be honest, like as long as they deliver, it's fine. And so I think that's the third thing. And I will add one caveat, because this is also probably the hardest part about freelancing. I think it's the ultimate meritocracy in terms of you eat what you kill or you eat what you deliver. And for some, that's terrifying because the best do rise to the top, and it does create a power law where the best are doing phenomenal, and it's really tough to break to get to that part. But I would say I love it personally, but I also recognize that it adds a lot of pressure on people.
I totally feel what you're talking. It's a lot of pressure, basically. And if you can't do, in my world, in my mind, I feel like freelancers are basically entrepreneurs. And to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a different like mind. I just listened to some podcasts and others saying like, if you don't love what you do, and if you can't cope with all those stuff, go have a simple job. You can't be a freelancer. You can't be an entrepreneur. Just go find a job and do that. So what traits should a person have to be a good freelancer from your point of view?
I think a good freelancer has to have radical ownership at their core. And it's funny, we could go all day talking about the entrepreneur or freelancer angle. I think that historically freelancers have had to be entrepreneurial, but I don't think it's a prerequisite. And I hope that going forward, freelancers can just be freelancers and not entrepreneurs. I don't think a good, at least in my experience, a good freelancer doesn't have a personal brand usually. They actually have a good enough LinkedIn, but they're not out there promoting themselves every day. Like you kind of see a lot of these like freelance influencers, which just kind of cracks me up because a good freelancer is too busy to do that. And they care about their clients, not their personal image. That's just, my anecdotal experience. There's no data to back that. It's just like 10 years of seeing this. And so I think, kind of side tangent, right? I think that the overwhelming trait though is ownership. And there's no excuses, right? Like when you're in a full-time job, there's so many potential excuses. Now, I want to be really clear. Someone that's good in a full-time job generally makes a good freelancer. And so I get so mad when people say, I'm something like along the lines of, basically that they're not a good employee, but they're a good freelancer. And to be honest, I've seldom seen that. Usually someone who's a great employee actually makes a great freelancer, and someone that can't hold down a job probably isn't going to be a good freelancer. With that said, I think both come down to the radical ownership of literally just doing what you said you're going to do. And so I would say ownership's like the key trait that I've seen. And I would say secondary and tertiary to that is that you have to understand what you can do, how to quantify that, and very clearly communicate that. And so what I mean by that is a good freelancer on the first time that you meet them is able to very clearly say, this is how I can help. And isn't even able to break it down to, this is how long it'll take. This is how much it'll cut the results we should start to see to measure success. And they're able to clearly communicate that. But if there's not the ownership, then it turns into, you sound good and you just keep rotating new clients. But that's what I'd go with. I'd say radical ownership is definitely the overwhelming trait.
You were talking about this personal branding, and it reminded me of this TV show when people are breaking to old garages and finding some stuff there, and like they're breaking to some super forgotten garage, and they're like, oh, it's an amazing car there in a perfect condition. Nobody ever used it. But they didn't know that this car will be in this garage. So how will people find those great experts if they are not out there?
This is such an important conversation and such an important problem. Because when I look at when I look at the easiest sort of freelance careers, and when I say easiest, let's define it by the first 2 years. Generally what you see is someone that has a logo. So a logo that looks like a Microsoft or some reputable brand, also looks like 3+ years at said logo and generally some sort of management level. And then typically their first couple clients come directly from their network. So they're never, you're not going to see them usually. They are reaching out to their existing potential, ex-manager or ex-client in some of the best cases too. And they're just saying, hey, I'm open for part-time work. There's a great new Ernie Park. You should definitely talk with Yuri. He does part-time tech. And that's the story of himself and a lot of his community. As I was working at HubSpot for 7 years, I had a family who wanted to not commute to the office every day and just told my boss I'll work in a part-time manner. So that is honestly the easiest track I've seen. So for the people though that don't necessarily have that, I think there's kind of 3 options. You just email everyone, you build up your own personal reputation, or you jump on a marketplace. And I don't know, each person has a different situation. And so if you're someone that is living in a large city, I would say get out there, go to most networking events in an intentional way. If you're someone living in a remote setting, I'd say, well, you should be hyper targeting people you reach out to on LinkedIn or some various communities. Everyone's path is different, but I will say that to be honest, is just velocity and consistency in terms of make sure you're reaching out, make sure you're showing up. And just because someone says no, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because it means you're not wasting your time.
Yeah, no size fits all. And I still feel like you have to, go out there and you still cannot do just freelancing work. You have to do the sales work. You have to reach out to people and God damn it. But yeah, I totally, yeah. And
that's where a marketplace, Yuri, that's where a marketplace, like I've been in this for over 10 years now. And for a long time, I was very anti-marketplace, right? When I started, it was just working Fiverr was kind of it. Now there are so many verticalized niche marketplaces like Code Control, right? Where they'll take care of you. And so I think if you are a good developer, you should be hopping onto Code Control, right? That's going to be your quickest path. They've already unlocked a lot of the contracts that you're going to need. They have the clients are already there, right? So go do that. If you are in marketing, go to We Are Rosie, or there's another one that's top end that I forgot. If you're in finance accounting, go to Poro. So marketplaces now are a really, really good shortcut to get a soft land deal.
But even there, you have to be active,
I know.
I always say this to people, like, if you just sit silent, nobody will know you. Like, if you see a job, you have to at least apply for that,
True.
So, yeah.
That's true.
And really, Matthew, I'm so sad that we have only 15 minutes and we already overpassed them, because I really wish to have the sky's the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So the final question, what is your favorite food?
Oh man, favorite food or food I should be eating?
Right. So let's talk about favorite
food. So I live in Savannah, Georgia. And so I live in the South, which if there are Americans listening, they would understand what I mean by that. But I would say chicken and waffles. There's just nothing better. But it's not what I should be eating. So I should be eating, I would say, just like a steak.
Got it, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And it's such a pleasure to hear and learn from you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Yuri.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button of 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.